I think y'all are gonna make me do it. You're going to make me create another video about Tradwives. I made a couple videos last year about Tradwives, and I thought that would be the last time I would ever talk about that. But in between then, when I made those videos, and today, Tradwife industry has just boomed. More and more people every day are creating Tradwife content on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, all over the internet. Tradwives are lurking behind every corner, and they are ready to spread their ideology, their lifestyle, and their beliefs to as many people as will consume their content. And yes, the recent Ballerina Farms discourse has brought me here, but it won't end with Ballerina Farms. My name is Liz. I grew up in a fundamentalist cult, and I like to overshare on the internet. So today we're going to overshare about my thoughts about Tradwives, starting with the ever-present discourse about Ballerina Farms.
Ballerina Farms has just made her first TikTok addressing the Times article.
Did y'all catch what Ballerina Farms' husband just did?
I saw Ballerina Farms respond.
Here's the thing about even when I first started dancing, I felt like
Get this straight. Hannah from Ballerina Farms.
And admit you're in danger.
That New York Times article about Ballerina Farms was...
There has been so much internet content created over the last several weeks about Ballerina Farms that it feels redundant to be talking about this, but at the same time, if you've never heard of this drama, controversy, whatever you want to call it, I feel extremely happy for you. You are out of the loop and you deserve that. You deserve to be free of this internet drama. It's interesting, I saw this article when it was published being talked about on Twitter, and then I read the article and it provoked a lot of feelings in me, and my feelings have gone up and down as I've thought about it over the last 3 weeks. On July 20th of 2024, the Times of London published a piece titled "The Queen of the Tradwives."
Hannah Nealman is part of this online phenomenon called the Tradwives. They are fulfilling really stereotypical historical gender norms. So they don't work outside the home, though they are obviously now social media influencers. They tend to have lots of children. They make meals totally from scratch. And they, crucially, are very public about it. So these are not women who are choosing this life and then living this life behind closed doors. They're posting about it online. And this content is glowing and gorgeous and looks totally idyllic. She said to me, I really want to show other women that it's possible. But it's not possible. It's not possible to live this life because not everyone can be a social media star. This life is for social media and financially enabled by social media.
What's behind this craze? And what does it tell us about modern feminism? The story today: Tradwives, the influencers selling 1950s housewife life.
Megan's thesis is that Hannah's lifestyle promotes being a tradwife, and she wanted to speak to Hannah about being a tradwife, about being the face of a brand, and what that means to her. And what's very interesting is that Hannah, throughout the article, disputes that she's even a tradwife. Agnew writes, "Tradwives are an internet phenomenon, women who have rejected modern gender roles for the more traditional existence of wife, mother, and homemaker, and who then promote that life online, some to millions of followers. Their lifestyle is often, though not always, bound to Christianity. They film themselves cooking mad things from scratch, chewing gum from corn syrup, waffles from a sourdough starter, their faces glowing in beams of sunlight, their voices soft and breathy, their children free range." She continues, "Nealman is the most well-known tradwife, despite having never attached herself to the movement or even using the term. How does she feel about it? We were already together doing what we were doing," Daniel replies instead, "and then tradwife came along. We can't help it. This is what we are. If we're trad dad, trad wife, so be it." Nealman, however, thinks otherwise. "I don't necessarily identify with it," she says, "because we're traditional in the sense that it's a man and a woman. We have children. But I do feel like we're paving lots of paths that haven't been paved before." That is the biggest paradox. In selling the life of a stay-at-home mother, Nealman and other tradwives have created high-earning jobs. They're being paid to act out a fantasy. "So for me to have the label of a traditional woman," she continues cautiously, "I'm kind of like, I don't know if I identify with that." "Is the husband the head of the household here?" "No," Daniel answers. "We're co-CEOs." "Yeah," Nealman says, "we are." It continues. "Is she a feminist? I feel like I'm a She stops herself. There's so many different ways you could take that word. I don't even know what feminism means anymore. She absolutely feels as though she has become politicized by other people. We try so hard to be neutral and be ourselves, and people will put a label on everything. This is just our normal life. Yeah, I think that says a lot, but let's keep chatting about this. The writer peppers the articles with things that she perceives as she is visiting ballerina farms. She sees a woman with 8 children who is worn down from mothering and house life. She tells us that Hannah will often spend days in bed from exhaustion. She explained that Hannah did not use any epidurals for her pregnancy, except in a conversation that shows that Hannah did use an epidural when her husband was not present at the labor and delivery. She tells us that Hannah turned down her husband when they were dating, back in the time when they were dating. She kept turning him down until he used his family connections to force her to sit next to him on a 5-hour flight. She writes that Hannah gave up ballet to marry her husband after only a few months of dating. This paints a portrait of a woman who gave up her agency in order to benefit a man, and that portrait sparked outrage and conversations online. A lot of online evidence seems to support that narrative. The egg apron video that went viral is just one prominent example people circulated after the article was published.
Okay, that's my birthday present from Daniel. Hoping they're tickets to Greece.
Where's it from?
I don't know, the boys took it off.
I took it off.
It's from Ukraine.
So, plane tickets? Ooh, a hat I can wear in Greece.
It's not a hat.
It's not.
Oh, my egg apron!
Eggs in it.
Great, then you can gather eggs.
So cute. It's really cute. It's a cute one.
That's the best. You're welcome.
Thanks, honey.
Not for a long time.
I also saw 4 blog posts by Hannah Neeleman from their time when they lived in Brazil surface online, and those blog posts also broke my heart because they painted a portrait of a woman who was isolated and alone in a foreign country, who became reliant on her husband, and who seemed to shoulder a lot of blame for family events that went wrong. And while that seemed really strange and heartbreaking, I do want to acknowledge that it's also seemed to be tongue-in-cheek, and I don't know that Hannah, when writing those posts, was truly believing that it was her fault her husband was late for work or her fault that they got in a car wreck. I think it can be both. I think it could be a mix of Mormon patriarchy and also a woman who is using humor and writing in a way to alleviate some of her own sense of isolation in a foreign country, as she is a very young mother at this time. And I also think a lot of Mormonism plays into this, and most of us aren't Mormons. So I feel like a lot of people reading this, not having a Mormon background, can be alarmed by it. And Ballerina Farm strongly disagreed with the narrative the writer published. She posted a video on her own social media saying that the article shocked her, it harmed her, and that she was grieved and upset by how her family was portrayed, and they felt like it was an attack on their family.
A couple of weeks ago, we had a reporter come into our home to learn more about our family and business. We thought the interview went really well, very similar to the dozens of interviews we had done in recent memory. We were taken back, however, when we saw the printed article, which shocked us and shocked the world by being an attack on our family and my marriage, portraying me as oppressed, with my husband being the culprit. This couldn't be further from the truth. Nothing we said in the interview implied this conclusion, which leads me to believe the angle taken was predetermined. For Daniel and I, our priority in life is God and family. Everything else comes second. The greatest day of my life was when Daniel and I were married 13 years ago. Together we have built a business from scratch. We've brought 8 children into this world and have prioritized our marriage all along the way. We are co-parents, co-CEOs, co-diaper changers, kitchen cleaners, and decision makers. We are one. And I love him more today than I did 13 years ago. We have many dreams still to accomplish. We aren't done having babies. We are excited for our new farm store to open, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for the rest of it. But for now, I'm doing what I love most, being a mother, wife, a businesswoman, a farmer, a lover of Jesus, and making meals from scratch.
I read a really interesting article from Deseret News, and it's an opinion piece, and the writer in the opinion piece, she says, what is missing from the conversation is that Hannah's agency is being stripped by the writer of the Times piece as much as it may or may not have been taken away by her husband. And yet there is no doubt that the success of the Ballerina Farm brand is due to Hannah herself. There is no ballerina farm without the ballerina. In the Times article, Daniel emphasizes that Hannah stays at home with the kids and he works the fields. But arguably, Ballerina Farm is what it is because of Hannah's social media ambition and savvy. If Hannah were truly as conditioned as the public says she is, to be trapped on a farm with a domineering husband and a brood of children, there is no way she would have been as ambitious as she was to qualify, apply, and to be accepted into Juilliard in the first place. That takes smarts, talents, social capital, resources, and yes, ambitious dreams, wanting more than a provincial life. But the thing about the article and about the discourse about Ballerina Farm herself is that it flattens Hannah into the ballerina on her brand's label, a cartoon of something pretty. So I wanted to dive more into how we perceive tradwives. I disagree with how the article writes what a tradwife is. A tradwife is someone who believes in the religious concept that a wife submits in all things to her male authority. I strongly disagree that a tradwife is non-religious. A tradwife must have religious conviction to be a tradwife, in my personal opinion. A tradwife does not earn income, dictate decisions, or have her own autonomy in her life. Any money she earns goes directly to her husband. Any decisions that need made go directly to her husband, and her autonomy has been yielded to her husband. Before most people comment on tradwives, I think they need to watch Return of the Daughters as I did as a teenager. Return of the Daughters is a documentary from the early 2000s about young women who had decided to yield autonomy and authority in their life to their fathers until they would one day be married. I remember in the documentary they speak on Condoleezza Rice. There is a young woman who is Black in the documentary who talks about how in the Black community, Condoleezza Rice was someone to look up to and to admire. But as she is growing up, she realizes that Condoleezza Rice is not who she wants to look up to or admire because she's a feminist.
You'll just have to hear this Condoleezza Rice comment for yourself, because this is crazy.
Jasmine has gifts, she has abilities, and those are being developed as she works with and serves her father. I don't know why we allow ourselves to be forced into the world's mold that somehow says to go out and pour your life into a stranger in order to build the ministry or the business of a stranger equals freedom, equals liberty, equals fulfillment. But to do so with the man to whom God has entrusted you as your father is a waste. It's ironic if you think about the fact that a woman gives up other career opportunities to serve a man, but you say it about Condoleezza Rice, she's a hero, because that's precisely what she does for George Bush. She commits herself to his vision, not her own. She speaks the words of his agenda, not her own. She submits herself to him. For her to do that somehow makes her a hero. But for Jasmine to do that with her father somehow calls her into question.
And I remember watching that documentary and disagreeing internally with it, but knowing that the people around me believe this is the way a girl and eventually a woman is supposed to live, as someone who is second to her husband in all things. I think a lot of people who talk about tradwives don't have that background, don't have that indoctrination of what a tradwife is supposed to be and how it's tied up into religion and how the umbrella of authority by Bill Gothard is connected to the tradwives, and that authority comes from God, who gave it to men, who then are given authority over women.
Interestingly enough, the Bible doesn't command women to become independent. It commands them to be submissive. Why? Well, because part of the curse in Genesis chapter 3 is that Eve would have a desire, not just for her husband, but literally in the Hebrew for her husband's position.
I think because a lot of our culture doesn't understand the religious conviction that is connected to Tradwife lifestyle, then we fail to have true empathy and understanding, and also fail to understand the real dynamics of people who believe this. And I think a lot of the drama surrounding the Ballerina Farms article, the way that people on TikTok came out of the woodwork and to defend the writer or to accuse the writer of being a feminist with an agenda, is due to our cultural response to witnessing a trad wife perform online. When a woman is seen as a trad wife, many times an audience has one of very two common reactions. There's pity. Look at this poor woman forced into submitting to her husband at the expense of her own identity. Or a lot of people have anger. How can a woman allow this to happen to herself? How can a man be allowed to dominate his wife in such a way? And I think those reactions were blatantly clear when the Ballerina Farms article was published. There was a lot of pity, a lot of anger, and a lot of outrage. The accusation from a lot of traditional women is that feminists don't respect tradwives. They don't respect motherhood and women's work. And a lot of response from more non-traditional women is that tradwives think that anyone who lives and pursues a lifestyle that is not traditional is wrong. And there's that tension of people who feel judged by both sides. When I see this, I think both tradwives and feminists have something in common. They view traditional women's work as inferior. Being a wife and mother to a tradwife is inferior to the life a man leads. He is worthy of leadership, of value, and honor. Whereas she is not recognized as work, but her lifestyle is recognized as simple duty. It's what she exists for. The authority she has is not one that is given to her outside of her husband. And her lifestyle, her decisions, and the work she does in the home is inferior to the responsibility her husband has as the leader, protector, and provider. And while tradwives detest feminism for many wrong reasons, I don't think they're wrong when they claim that our culture as feminists does not value motherhood and work. Feminists have notoriously diminished motherhood. It is an accusation as old as time that many feminists position motherhood as a choice between having a career and being a wife and mother. Because for both the feminist and tradwives, motherhood is inferior to a career. It is not compatible. It is also the way our culture has positioned motherhood. Motherhood is a sacrifice. Motherhood is something women do as a duty. And our culture does not provide the resources that mothers need. We don't have universal child care. We don't have paid parental leave. We don't have even health care that's paid for. So having a baby will cost you thousands of dollars. And all of that places a burden on mothers that will put them at odds with their dreams outside of motherhood, their career, their passions, the life they could lead if they were not a mother. Often they have to choose between being a mother and those things because they don't have the resources to do both. And for many people, having a higher value is a career because our culture has devalued children and motherhood. When you have an argument about whether children are allowed at weddings, when you have an argument about whether you can bring children to a brewery or whether children should be allowed to cry in airplanes, that inherently devalues children. And for many women, it makes having children undesirable. And I think our society has just really devalued kids as an afterthought. We are not community-based. We're very individualist-based, and children are not considered in our society individuals till they're adults. They're an extension of their parents. And when children are an extension of their parents, there is no push from society to provide for them in a way that will alleviate the burden that is placed on parents to do all things for their kids. In a society that is community-based, children are part of the community. They're not just an extension of their parents. And when they're a part of the community, there are community resources for them so that parents don't have to make the decision between a career and their children. Anyway, That's a really long rant about how our society has devalued children and by that extension has devalued motherhood. And trad wives are not wrong that they are judged by our society. And feminists are not wrong that trad wives judge them. But I also think you have to realize that we will really never see the true life of a trad wife because a trad wife does not exist online. A trad wife exists solely for her husband. She is not visually appealing. She is not a natural storyteller, and her voice is not her own. Compare that to Ballerina Farms, who has the power of her own platform and voice, a woman who is framing her family and children in a way that presents her as a trad wife, yet she maintains editorial control. We'll never know the dynamics behind closed doors of Hannah's marriage. There are red flags in the article that caused me to feel heartbroken for her. But that is the tragedy of the trad wife. Abuse, harm, the constant devaluation of her own personhood is hidden, and what is left is the image that a man wants to share with the world. And whether that image on Ballerina Farms is her husband's choice or her own choice, we will never know. We can only know what she says, and she says that is her choice to share. And I think at this point, it would be wrong to say otherwise. Like, Hannah has made it very clear that Ballerina Farms' social media and an existence online is from her. It is her decision to share this with the world. And until otherwise, I think we will have to believe her because there's no other option. Not believing her only harms her. Whether you engage or not, it is not up to us as the audience to decide whether Hannah is telling the truth or not. I hope you followed all my various rabbit trails that I ran down. I know that I really didn't stick to the topic of trad wives 100% in this video, and I just wanted to talk about it. So I wrote about 40% of this, and the rest of it was off the cuff, which maybe you could tell. Anyway, I am reading A Well-Trained Wife by Tia Levings right now, and I think if you want to really get into a moment of reflection and conversation about trad wives, then this would be a great book. If you've watched Shiny Happy People, you may have seen Tia Levings' story in Shiny Happy People, but she was a trad wife in the Institute in Basic Life Principles and the Gothard movement who ended up having to flee her marriage due to threats to her safety. And I'm only 30% into her book, but it is very well written, very engaging, and I would highly recommend it. And if you want to support this channel, support me, please sign up for my newsletter. I'm also moving in August, and if you want to help out with my apartment move, I have linked my apartment wish list below. You don't feel like you have to do that. Subscribing and commenting means a great lot. And I will see y'all all around the internet, so I'll see you next time. See ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.